Mike, what's the difference? Okay. Got one, two.
Several 427 side oilers that we're building right now, and this one's getting really close to wrapping up and then going to the dyno. Couldn't find an actual side oiler crankshaft, which would have made it a 427, so we put a scat rotating assembly in it. So it's actually now a 482, 4250 bore, 4250 stroke. It's got a custom bullet hydraulic roller cam in it, so we've gotten rid of the solid cam. There's a lot of little internal oil tricks to these motors. A lot of these you'll find they won't be drilled here. If they're not, then you can't run a hydraulic cam, so they have to be drilled and break through into these galleys. A lot of these motors, they won't even be drilled here. You won't see anything but just a casting boss here and no holes. If that's the case, also you cannot run anything hydraulic. It's got to be a solid lift or flat tappet cam. So that's one of the many things when you're doing one of these you got to check, because you put it all together and lifters are never ever going to pump up. So we've done a couple of things to this one where we've blocked off our oil passages to the head here, drilled and tapped these, put a set screw in it. The rockers we're running from Harlan Sharp feed through the push rod, so we do not oil through the cylinder head on this particular motor. So block that off. That keeps more oil on the bottom end of the motor. The other thing we did a little different is, if you look, I think it's on this side. Yeah, right here. Since it's not flipped over, you'll have two holes. This is what makes it a side oiler, is you've got these right here. These all intersect into the mains along with this one. Right in here you've got a bypass valve. Back in the day, this is what dictated your oil pressure, as far as other than bearing clearances. When this spring would bypass, it sends the oil back into the pan. And instead of doing that, we actually kind of trick this thing and make the spring really, really tight, put a spacer in it so that it's basically not functional. This will not bypass oil until well over 100 pounds pressure. And we let the oil pump do that work, because we know what a milling pump puts out. We just, in the video you'll see there, I think it made 76 pounds on the drill, which is really good for an FE. It'll make, you know, still seeping out of my little deal. But you can kind of watch the oil pressure. So where were we? Oh, talking about here on the bypass valve. So yeah, we saw 76 pounds on the drill, which is really good. Once the motor warms up, of course that'll come down a little bit, but that's good oil pressure for an FE. They're notorious for having low oil pressure. A lot of guys will even restrict this hole that we blocked off. They'll drill a smaller hole in that set screw just to slow the oil down on the top side. So we're learning a lot about these. Some old school man from probably 30, 40 years ago had driven dowel pins in here, and they were actually intersecting both ways into the lifter valley, and I saw that from the back, and I actually had to drill them out and then hammer them out, because what they were doing was restricting oil to the top of the motor. So that way, the problem with these back in the day was they'd flood the top of the motor and then they'd starve on the bottom, because the original pans only held like 5.5 quarts at the most. It didn't take very much. If everything's pumped to the top, it can't get back fast enough. So lots of little small quirks. We did our zero like we've done before, real deal zero stop to that. These come in a big tab, so we actually make this mark ourselves once we figure out where actual top dead center is. So there's no just put a pointer on here. That is got to be dialed in. And so it's right on the money. Cam degree perfect within a half degree. And then over here, so these are pretty cool. These are a Johnson lifter, and these actually have a pin order. So let's see if I can see where it's at. So right here in this band, you see this groove. They've got an oil slot there. There's actually a hole that oils down. So used to they call these like a hippo lifter on a solid. That's a high pin oiler is what the term was. this actually has pressurized oiling to that roller. So these should last forever. I mean, it's just one more thing. Now these are, you know, over $1,000 now for lifters, but they're Johnson's, good stuff, made in America, you know, all that sort of thing. And they're free. You always check, make sure everything's free. It'll grow, but you don't want them tight. But check out the heads over here. It's pretty cool. These are some more super rare Ford stuff. This is what's called a high riser head. Big tall port, you'll see there's a high riser, medium riser, and then a standard, which a standard port's a little shorter and fatter. These are a tall skinny port, so they got a really nice short turn out of the box. I mean, you don't even really have to port these. You can gain a teeny bit from porting them, but they're pretty dang good out of the box for a FE. These heads don't, in my opinion, FE heads, they just don't flow good air at all. The exhaust side on them's garbage, but that's just how they are. Even though everybody loves them, they still don't flow as much as a small block Chevrolet head that's decent flows, but you know, you can make some decent power. It's got the C4 part number. That tells you this is cast in 64. The C is for the in the 60s, the 4 is for the year, and then AE is, I think that's the plant that it was made in, and then you've got this is the super rare part number over here that makes it so rare.
Okay.
What I was showing you earlier was the oiling, what I blocked off in the deck. That's where typically you would oil the rocker shafts. They would come through this hole down in the head, and then it feeds that whole bar. But we're going to feed it through the push rod instead, so it's actually better that way. These are better distribution through the push rod and all that. I'm waiting on the last head to come back from the machine shop. We had to trim up one side of it. This thing had quite a bit of drama. This stuff was in a barn forever and collected. Must have had water in it. I had to heal a coil. These 4, this one I had to put a time cert in. It already had like a half 20 hole built in, you know, drilled and tapped in it. So put that keen cert, time cert, whatever you want to call it, and then heal a coil the rest. Should make good power. I mean, it's only 10 to 1 because it's an iron head going in a CSX Cobra. So I mean, it doesn't have to make a lot of power to be fast. It'll probably make somewhere in the 560, 570 range, I would guess, being a big